Andrew Feather is the current men's national hill climb champion. He has some incredible watts, and now he has an incredible bike to match. The price of this thing is absolutely incredible, but so is the tech inside it. And if the claims are to be believed, well, the big brands might have been a little bit loose with the truth. Anyway, before I get to that, let's go and chat to Andrew. Andrew Feather, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks.
We bought you a cup of tea and you're ready to spill the tea on everything about your bike. First off, the hard-hitting question. How much does this thing weigh?
It weighs 5.5 kilos.
5.5 kilos. Is that lighter than last year's?
It is lighter than last year, probably by about 300 grams, so pretty impressive, yeah.
Right, so one, this is a very expensive bike, and I'm going to do a bit of a cost per gram in a moment. But at what stage do you reckon bikes like this are going to stop getting lighter? Because you were telling us off camera that Swi have actually come up with a way of making the frame set even lighter.
I think, yeah, I mean, they're trying to roll out some new technology to make it even lighter. I mean, it's incredible. I think the frame is coming in at around 670 grams, so to knock another 100 grams off that is pretty light. But it's, you know, what's really impressive is that even though it is so lightweight, it's still really stiff.
Yeah.
I think in part because of this, I mean, I'm sure you'll come on to it, this pure monocoque build. So there's no lugs, there's no joins in the frame. It's just one mold, which apparently is extremely expensive and time consuming to build.
So I've left Andrew just sipping his coffee up there because I want to tell you what actually goes into these frame sets, because it's really cool. Most brands don't actually publish what carbon they use. Specialized effectively brands its carbon with FACT 12R or 10R depending on the bike model. Trek calls its stuff OCLV and then has again a number. Pinarello, to be fair to them, does actually say what goes into their frames, but Swi is easily the most transparent brand that I've ever come across. They claim to use NTPT high-performance carbon textiles, which apparently have an exceptionally dense unidirectional carbon weave of up to 29 ply. Swi says that your average carbon fabric is only 4 or 5 ply, and more, well, is apparently better here. The reason for this, Swi says, is that it gives you a much higher stiffness to weight ratio than typically seen in frame manufacturing. And you know what climbers like Andrew Feather absolutely love? It's stiffness to weight ratio. Right, back to Andrew. What were we saying? I'm going to check my notes. £3.78, I think we said, per gram. Yeah, £3.78 per gram for this bike. What does it actually feel like to ride a bike this expensive? Are you seeing that in your Strava times? I know that's a pretty basic kind of metric, but does it feel different?
I don't know whether I'm seeing it in my Strava times, but certainly, you know, in terms of just mentally knowing that you have literally got the absolute best, basically. Yeah. And it's just really interesting. Also, the geometry of the frame is very different to last year. So the Lav 71 is a much more relaxed geometry, which means that, you know, there's an element of it probably being more comfortable. But I mean, this one is far more aggressive, far more race orientated kind of thing. And you really do feel that on the climbs. Yeah. So as soon as you put the acceleration down, it literally goes quicker than the Cannondale last year.
Really?
Yeah. So, and that is to do with both, I think, you know, that's two things. I think that's to do with both the weight and the fact that it's a bit lighter, and also the fact of this geometry that it's just so aggressive. It's very tight to the frame. And I noticed that as soon as I started riding it, in that the wheelbase is very short. I think it's almost 4 centimeters shorter than the Lav 71.
That's huge.
Which is, and you can see it. You can see how close the tires are to the frame. Yeah. Everything's in very tight, but it just kind of translates into this absolute rapid machine as soon as you put your foot on the pedals, basically.
I was going to say, it looks tight here, you've actually got 23mm tubs on there.
Yeah.
So that's a small tire by today's standards. I remember racing on them, 10 years ago, and thinking, God, these are wide.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I suppose on my Schwalbe training tires that I use, which is the Pro 1 TT, that is a bit wide. That's the standard 25.
So it feels more reactive.
It certainly feels more reactive, yeah.
Have you really sent it down any climbs yet? Like descents?
Yeah, I have. So I was lucky to go out to Italy for a couple of days to pick the bike up, and they are based in Bassano del Grappa, which is right at the bottom of the Monte Grappa, which is an amazing area for cycling. So I had quite a few test runs doing ascents and descents down the Monte Grappa, and it was great. And it
sounds like the dream.
It was the dream. It was 40 degrees. It was amazing weather. It was at the end of August, and yeah, it was really nice just to kind of ride a different bike as well, because I've always been so accustomed with how Cannondale's ride and are built kind of thing. It's interesting to go across to a different brand this year and test out, what they're able to offer as well, really. So,
how did the move to Swi come about? Because the first I heard of this brand was when they contacted us to say that they were working with you. How did that all come about?
So it came about by me taking an old redundant Cannondale rim brake bike in to be repaired at Carbon Bike Repairs, basically.
Our good friends.
And Carbon Bike Repairs, obviously, a specialist in carbon frame. And I think they had liaised and sort of, certainly working on the technology of the Swi frame. And he was saying, Swi are interested in, ambassadors and also, people supporting the brand kind of thing. And your name would be sort of, ideal fit kind of thing. So I got in contact with Carbon Bike Repair, which is, great.
It does seem to be a natural fit, because everything about this bike seems to be about stiffness to weight. And that is the hill climb season in a nutshell.
It is, yeah. It's all pure power to weight ratio, basically. Probably less so this year than previous years. So obviously last year when I managed to win, it was a really long climb and steep climb. So power to weight ratio was absolutely key. I was very sort of trying to bring the weight down as much as possible, both on myself and on the bike. Whereas this year, probably less of an impact, because it's quite a short, sharp climb. It's only 3 minutes.
Polar opposite of last year.
Polar opposite. So, there will be the guys who are much bigger and more powerful who are in the mix as well this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, power to weight ratio is still key, but, on a short, sharp climb, those guys are still pushing for the win, really. So it's much more open than last year in terms of people who can win it.
And just in terms of the event itself, have you adapted your training at all to suit the type of effort? Because you've had a few good ding-dongs I've seen with Ben Miller, another friend of mine. From the racing days.
Exactly, yeah. And Ben's certainly a rider who's up and coming kind of thing. He's looking really good. Again, he's a guy who's a bit heavier than I am. But he's got, horrendous power kind of thing.
Mind games.
Call
him heavy now.
It's mind games. Yeah, maybe he's 10 kilos lighter than what he's saying. But no, he's certainly a good rider. But it's really interesting. I mean, you get all of these different, and this is why the hill climb season for me is so interesting, and particularly the nationals. The fact they hold it on a different course each year is that each year is so kind of aligned to a certain type of rider kind of thing, and. This year's, that short, powerful effort kind of thing, 3 minutes, all in basically. Whereas last year was, that was a pure climber's climb kind of thing. So it's just who can adapt and who can be best at, the given course really each year, which is, each year is different.
So you remember at the start that I said that some big brands had been a little loose with the truth. Well, it turns out that in their wording around monocoque frames, they might not be getting it quite right. Swi says that this is one of the only true monocoque frames. In fact, they claim that 99% of carbon frames are produced by bonding multiple carbon tubes and pieces. And you can see that in some brands' wording. A quick search of other brands' website turned up examples like multiple monocoque structures and modified monocoque construction. Those, in my mind, are clear examples of the term monocoque being used in a slightly confusing manner. Now, in isolation, those statements are actually true enough, but they don't actually refer to true monocoque structures. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit iffy about top-end frames being marketed in that way. But also, does it even matter that the frame that I'm riding isn't a true monocoque? Now, I am not the most powerful rider in the world, and with the greatest will in that world, I'm never going to have true monocoque money. So unless you have World Tour watts like our Andrew, or you just have really deep pockets and you want to blow the bank, I think a normal carbon frame is just going to be fine. In terms of your build, how similar is it to last year? Because I'm looking around your bike and I see a lot of components that I recognise, your Schmolke components, the lovely finishing kit.
Yeah. But
there are other components that I think are new. So can you take us through the build?
Yeah, so I mean, basically I'm running a Shimano Di2 12-speed Dura-Ace group set, which is what I ran last year. That's pretty much the lightest and most efficient kind of group set I see on the market at the moment for kind of that kind of frame. Been with Rotor for quite a few years, and Rotor, obviously I've got a power meter, and that's slightly different to last year. That's a new model that's been released by Rotor, which is a thinner, more light profile compared to previous years, and that's, I'm not sure what the weight difference is from last year, but it's certainly lighter. You know, it's just key to have that consistent power eating going forward, kind of thing. And it just works well, changing it between bikes and things. And in terms of gear ratios, I've gone for the same setup as I did last year.
This looks relatively standard. Is that a 38 on the front or a 40?
39 front ring, and then I've got a 30 rear cassette basically.
And is that a non-one-by specific chain ring?
It is, yeah. So this is the big hoo-ha I suppose I had with my mechanic who's based in Bristol Bomber Bikes last year. He was saying, no, you should not be riding this, you know, you need to be riding a narrow, wide chain ring if you are not going to have a chain catcher. And in the end we realised it was a case of trial and error, which is the case of a lot of these things really, is that the 12-speed seems to be very good at retaining the chain on an ordinary chain ring, whereas 11-speed wasn't as good. So you know, in the end, he was convinced equally as I was, really, that it did work. Touch wood, you know, I'm not going to get any chain drop in the actual event, but yeah.
And then to complete the bike, obviously you've got a very expensive frame. Naturally, let's have some expensive finishing kit, Schmolke stuff.
Schmolke stuff, yeah. I've run with that for quite a few years now. That's great. And
it's still my beating heart.
It's all really good. It's all really neat. You've got the integrated cables and stuff that go through the through both the stem and the bars. So it just looks really clean, the finish. I think from a mechanic's perspective, it's not easy to build because obviously you've got to get all the brake hoses through these tiny holes and things. But
you got a mechanic.
That's not my fault.
Thank you, Bomber Bikes.
I do try and give him as much time as possible to kind of when I take it in. But he's been great, and I think for him it's interesting as well because this is the most top-end components and kind of frame you can get, kind of thing. So it is interesting from a mechanical perspective as well, really. So
yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of anything else I've got new, I'm running the standard sort of SPD Dura-Ace pedals, like that big platform as last year. I've got the same dinky little lights as well, which is from this Swedish guy called Lucendai. He's fantastic. He's massively into his carbon 3D printing kind of things. He prints these amazing little lights.
I don't want to give you any advice, but we did have some comments on last year's video that said that you could shave off something huge like 0.2 of a gram by using some lighter zip ties. Have you specifically chosen these zip ties?
I think they were zip ties from last year. Yeah.
From like the really cutting edge and new to something that's quite traditional. You're still running tubs on here, tubular tires. Still running tubs,
yeah. So they're made by they're quite a risk actually. I mean, they're the Vittoria specific track tire, which is a pista tire. They've got absolutely no puncture protection. So I've actually not ridden them on any hill climbs this year.
Andrew didn't even ride down to filming today on them. He's got some spare wheels just here, just for riding down the hill.
So I'm going to go up to Hexham, which is where the Nationals are held this year, up in Northumberlandshire near Newcastle. And I'm going to do probably two test runs on the course and just test the tyres in wet conditions and just try and gauge what the tyre pressure I need for that rear wheel basically. And I'm pretty sure it will be quite similar to last year. So if it's wet conditions, I ran them at just under 60 PSI.
Okay.
Whereas on a dry day, I probably ran them at maybe 75. So it's just those last minute tests really. but I can't run them really too much. I've just probably got to do one test run, that's it.
It's those small details though, isn't it? Because if we have a day like today, sun's out, and it depends on the course as well. If the course is, you know, shrouded with trees, then it will stay wet. It is the UK, it rains pretty much every minute. But if it's nice and clear, like the ground here is drying up, no problem. So that really is a consideration to make kind of on race day.
It is kind of on race day, yeah, and it's kind of, it's looking at the day before really. I don't ride the day before, always before the Nationals. That's kind of my one rest day per year, is just to do absolutely nothing, so their legs are just completely rested. But it's a difficult one because you've got to get it right, because any wheel spin it's gonna cost you in time, it's gonna cost you mentally as well. If you feel the wheels are slipping, whatever power you put through the pedals is just evaporating into thin air basically. So yeah, there's all these things to think about. There's all those rates, you know, which equally other riders are doing kind of thing. But yeah, when it's a 3-minute climb, you know, it's more likely that it's going to be split by seconds between the riders kind of thing. So everything has to be absolutely perfect for you to do that. You go out on a 3-minute ride, a 3-minute climb kind of thing, and you think that you have to go all out, but you don't. It's longer than you think. You really do have to really importantly hold back on that first half, because all these hill climbs are won at the end basically. So if you got, it's easy to think, particularly in 3 minutes, because you have to go hard, but you can't go hard to tip over that red line kind of thing. So it's a difficult one. I feel much more control with a 5-minute effort, because it's just a little bit longer where you've got that element of control, whereas 3 minutes you're really on the edge. How
do you pace that? Within the first minute, are you looking to hit a specific power number or keep your heart rate in check?
I don't do, it's purely on feel. I feel I always do my best rides when I'm going on feel, and if I did start looking at the power meter, it just become jumpy. I'd probably look at it and think, I'm not going hard enough, I'll put some power down, or if I'm going too hard, I'll lay off, and it just ends up being really jumpy. I think again, it comes with an element of experience, maybe, that you've just got to try and trust yourself that you're not going to go too hard, and you've just got to feel it in your legs. You've got to trust. I always think to myself, maybe I'm giving away my secrets here, I always think to myself, I want to feel powerful and strong at the end when the crowds are big.
Okay.
And I'm constantly thinking that riding up the climb kind of thing, I want to do a good performance at the end where the crowds are. And if you think that, there's that element of just trying to hold it back a little bit. Whereas if you panic and you go out too hard thinking, I've got to get to the top as fast as possible, it's game over basically. So it's really hard. It's hard to do, and it's not something I always get right. But whoever wins, whoever it would be, will get that right. So
rather you than me, mate. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. This is fantastic. We'll wait, I think. Thank you so much for joining us. A €21,000 bike is insane to me, but at least you've got the watts to, match the bike. Good luck at Nationals.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully bring us back a stripy jumper.
Thank you, cheers.